Welcome back. I'm David Gura. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh denying an allegation of sexual misconduct ahead of his confirmation vote this week. The accusation reportedly made by a woman who sent a letter to Congress detailing an incident from the early 1980s. The New Yorker reporting that, quote, during an encounter at a party, Kavanaugh held her down and that he attempted to force himself on her. The woman claims that Kavanaugh and a classmate of his, both of whom had been drinking, turned up music that was playing in the room to conceal the sound of her protests. The Supreme Court nominee is pushing back against that, saying, quote, I categorically and unequivocally deny this allegation. I did not do this back in high school or at any time. Joining now is Barry Grissom, the former U.S. attorney, and Katie Phang is back with me as well. She's an MSNBC legal analyst. Katie, let me start with you and just get your reaction to this story. Your sense of what difference this might make as we look ahead to that committee vote that's been scheduled and by all intentions seems to be taking place on Thursday of this week.
So Chuck Grassley has indicated that's what exactly is going to happen. The vote's going to move forward on Thursday, and frankly, David, it's not going to move the needle. This particular nomination and this particular nominee has been rife with several issues, and it's not to diminish the import of the accusation, and that is exactly what it is. It's currently just an accusation, but the fact of the matter is that the Kavanaugh confirmation proceeding has been completely inundated with so many issues that run the gamut from Second Amendment gun control to abortion to whether you can prosecute a sitting president. And so this particular new allegation, the timing of it is fascinating. The fact that this has been known by Senator Feinstein since July kind of raises some eyebrows and some questions, but the reality is that confirmation will move forward on Thursday. And let's look back a year, David. Back in 2017, the filibuster that happened over Justice Gorsuch blew up exactly the idea that you had to have 60 votes to confirm a SCOTUS nominee. And so with that, the nuclear option was invoked by Mitch McConnell. And so now all you need is a simple majority. And so you kind of have to look back in the past to figure out why what's going to happen with Kavanaugh on Thursday is going to be the likely confirmation of him as the newest Supreme Court justice.
You mentioned the pushback that Senator Diana Feinstein has got for the timing of this. I'm going to read a statement here from one of her representatives, a spokesperson for the senior senator from California. Quote, the senator took these allegations seriously and believed they should be public. However, the woman in question made it clear she did not want this information to be public. It is critical in matters of sexual misconduct to protect the identity of the victim when they wish to remain anonymous, and the senator did so in this case. Barry, I want to turn to you. The October term of the Supreme Court, the next one begins on October the 1st. That's when we can expect the first arguments here. Katie, talking about the timing of this, the timing has been everything here. You've had Republicans, you've had a White House very keen to get this going as soon as possible. As you look at this, another wrinkle, as Katie puts it, another issue that's come up during the course of these hearings, what do you make of how quickly all of this has transpired?
Well, the thing that I think is most bothersome to me, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, is that, as Katie indicated, Mitch McConnell moved away from the 60-vote rule. At least the 60-vote rule meant you had to have someone who was a consensus candidate who get the nomination. We've moved so far away from that now the simple majority means that it is even more politicized than it had been in the past. And I think that to the institution of the court itself, that demeans it, because it's now viewed, I think, by a majority of Americans as a simple political animal. It's not viewed as an impartial arbiter of different issues. So sadly, I don't think we will ever return to the 60-vote rule, and I think that was the one thing that no matter what the candidate's background was, whether he or she is a liberal or a conservative, it was at least someone that you could have consensus on and someone that you would think would at least approach their position as a fair and impartial judge.
Barry, to me, it gets to the point that there are problems with this process as a whole, in that you're not learning a whole lot about each nominee's jurisprudence because they're not going to answer questions that might put them into authority position. You're not learning about a whole lot about them personally as well. Of course, you had a nominee here who was very keen to talk about his volunteerism, the fact that he coaches a girls basketball team, et cetera, et cetera. But you walk away from those 3 days of hearings with what, Barry? What do we take away from a Supreme Court hearing like this?
Well, that you've watched kabuki theater. I mean, it's an exercise in not answering questions. It's an exercise in obfuscation. It's an exercise in not getting to the core of what that person's true jurisprudence is, which I think is what the whole process should be about. This idea that we stepped away and have abandoned the 60-vote rule, I think will only come back to, as a nation, harm us in the long run.
Katie, there was a statement from Anita Hill. A lot of parallels have been made here to what happened back in 1991 when Clarence Thomas was nominated to the Supreme Court, and I'll just read a little bit from her statement here. Given the seriousness of these allegations, the government needs to find a fair and neutral way for complaints to be investigated. The Senate Judiciary Committee should put in place a process that enables anyone with a complaint of this nature to be heard. I have seen firsthand what happens when such a process is weaponized against an accuser, and no one should have to endure that again. We were talking just a moment ago, Barry and I, just about the way these confirmation hearings work today. Do you see any signs of this changing in light of this latest indication here, this letter that's come to at least the senator's attention by Diana Feinstein, based on the emails, the memos that were introduced during the course of this hearing against committee confidentiality? Are things likely to change, do you think, Kate?
Well, you know, Barry made a good point about the politicization of this process. I mean, you would think that confirming somebody to the highest court of the land, where the law that's promulgated from that court is stuff that is bound and binds all of us as precedent, is pretty important, I think, for even the average Joe. But I don't think that they're necessarily going to make any of those changes anytime soon, because there's never going to be an agreement between the Republicans and the Democrats and the way that that process should go. There are parallels with the Anita Hill issue. You know, it was right after Clarence Thomas went through his initial round of the confirmation proceeding that the Anita Hill accusations come out. And we also know, David, that even Joe Biden later on said, look, I'm remiss that I didn't actually follow up more with the fact that there were other women that were going to corroborate what Anita Hill said. I mean, at this point in time, you have to be mindful and respectful that when it comes to sexual assault or allegations of sexual assault, you have to be respectful of the desire of the victim to remain anonymous. Senator Diana Feinstein, I can't sit here and Monday morning quarterback how she poorly or did not poorly handle the situation, but I think that there needs to be a process, and I think it's a well-taken comment by Anita Hill to be able to funnel specifically those types of allegations. But you know, it's been turned over to the FBI, and they're not going to investigate it at this time.
All right, Katie Phang, thank you very much for the time on this Saturday. My thanks to Barry Grissom as well. Thanks to both of you. And nothing to do with President Trump or the Trump campaign. That is what Rudy Giuliani says about Paul Manafort's plea deal.